I've decided I'm going to start doing the Starfield updates now. I am planning on doing lore videos with Starfield as it is coming out, and we are starting to get some lore this past week, as well as a Q&A that we had seen with some of the developers. So I'm just going to be covering those few things right now. So let's kick off with the timeline. So this past week, Bethesda has been releasing the timeline of before the game takes place. So here on X, we have Starfield the game. They have been releasing these frames here where we get to see different periods and what has happened in the past of Starfield, and we have an entire array. If we go onto their main website, we have this right here, which allows us to see everything that has happened so far. So guys, before we get into the lore, tell me down in the comments, what is the thing that you are most excited for from Starfield? All right, now let's get into this. So it all begins in 2050. Humans finally arrive on Mars. At this point, we are living for a while, and by 2100, humans are now living in space. About 6 years later, we finally arrive in Alpha Centauri, which is 4.37 light years away from Earth. And this is where we start colonizing the solar systems. In 2159, the United Colonies are established. This grows later to become the biggest military might and faction that you can join. In 2160, New Atlantis is founded. This is one of the biggest cities that you can go to, and this becomes the official capital city of the United Colonies in 2161. By 2167, Cheyenne is finally settled by Solomon Coe, who founds its first settlement, Aquila City. In 2188, Coe invites the Star System Voli to join Cheyenne in a new alliance called the Free Star Collective. This is officially formed in 2189. Shortly after, in 2194, the United Colonies positions a star station called the Clinic in orbit around the Dibala in the Narian system. The unaffiliated peoples of the Narian system see this as a UC attempt to expand their borders, so they demand the UC to remove the Clinic. Eventually, the UC refuses, and the people of the Narian vote to join the Free Star Collective, who will mobilize to protect the Narian system in 2195. Due to this Free Star mobilization, the UC in turn moves a fleet into the Narian system, and Free Star responds in kind. Thus, the Narian War begins. In 2216, the Narian War is finally dragged out long enough, and a Treaty of Narian is signed by the UC and the FC, which ends the conflict. This is where the term settled systems is formalized in the treaty. By 2221, the FC have created Free Star Rangers, who are founded as an elite, protective, and investigative force who are dedicated to serve all citizens of the FC. By 2275, the Constellation is finally formed by Sebastian Banks. The original members of Constellation include Chloe Bao, who's an accomplished physicist, Aja Mamasa, who is the youngest member and Sebastian's protege, Darius Andrus, who's a botanist and a specialist in xenoflora, Bernadette Laurent, who's a very wealthy adventurer, Everardo Gill, who's a former smuggler, and Kadri Toma, who's a biologist and a physician. Their HQ is known as the Lodge, where they built in New Atlantis to serve the needs of the people for generations to come. By 2305, Barrett finally joins the Constellation. By 2307, the Free Star Collective begins to farm on a planet called Vesta out in the Lunara system. By 2308, the United Colonies claims that by establishing a colony on a fourth star system, the Free Star Collective has violated the Treaty of Narian. Diplomatic talks break down, and the UC lays siege to Vesta, killing anyone who stayed behind or who was brought in to defend it. The colony war officially begins. Now over in Constellation, in 2310, they finally came into possession of the first artifact, where they tuck it away into the Constellation archives. Now back over to the Colony War. In 2311, after several years of conflict, it finally comes to an end during the Battle of Cheyenne, as a fleet of civilian and military FC ships takes down the major ships of the UC Navy using hit-and-run guerrilla warfare. By 2315, the UC Vanguard was founded as part of a response from the FC's use of civilian ships during the Colony War. The Vanguard is the UC's own civilian navy, where they rely on civilians to use their own ships, and they pledge to protect the United Colonies and its interests. The ultimate reward for this service is you gain citizenship in the United Colonies. In 2319, Sarah Morgan becomes the youngest head of the UC Navigator Corps, though it is very short-lived position as the division is shut down in 2320. As she is cast adrift, she is still eager to put her training to good use, so she joins Constellation. 2321, Walter Stroud, who is the co-owner of Stroud Eklund, one of the Settled Systems' premier starship manufacturers, finally joins Constellation and becomes its primary financial backer. And here's where we really see Constellation gaining many members. In 2322, former Crimson Fleet pirate Vladimir Saul joins Constellation. 2325, Sarah Morgan finally becomes the acting chair of Constellation. 2325, theologian Matteo Catri joins Constellation. By 2326, Barrett found the original artifact in the Constellation archives and knows that it must be special and that we need to do something with it. In 2326, after several months of correspondence with Sarah Morgan, a graduate student and very gifted scientist, Noel, is invited to join Constellation. By 2327, the Freestar Ranger, Sam Coe, and his daughter, Cora, join Constellation. 2328, Andrea joins Constellation, and then Barrett convinces Constellation to purchase the star station L-868 and modify it to become a deep space scanner nicknamed the Eye. Now this is so far all that they have released, so there may be more to come. It seems they've been doing this every few days. The gameplay itself, when we as the player play, this actually takes place in 2330, so we do have a good idea of what has happened up until then. Now, just a few days ago, on the 16th, there was a Q&A with Will Shen and Emil Pagliarulo, I probably butchered that, where they answered 16 questions that they had chose from Discord and Reddit, Twitter, so on. So I will just be directly reading these answers. However, there will be a few that I will just paraphrase as we don't need to overcomplicate things. So first up, can we buy houses or property in main cities? Yes, there is housing in different cities that the player can get. Some you have to purchase and some are rewards for specific quests. Emil says we can purchase a dwelling in all the major cities in the game, and there's at least one that you can specifically get for completing something. If we get the kid stuff trait, will our parents be generated based on our character's looks, or are there standard parents put in place? What benefits might there be? Will Shen says that our programmers on our new face tech were excited to make a function that could try to match your custom face and then create the two parents. So they are based on what your character looks like, although the specific math is a bit beyond me. We had a similar tech in our previous games. Just as we did in Fallout 3 with your dad and in Fallout 4 with your son, in Starfield, if you take the kid stuff trait, your parents are based off of you. No spoilers, but I think fans will really appreciate the actors we got to play those roles, and they just get so into it. Oh, and yeah, you can get stuff. For those of us who have never played a Bethesda's game and will be starting Starfield, what information should we know that will make the experience more impactful right from the start? How deep should we go into creating our character's backstory before we start the game? We always make our games for fans both old and new, so you can jump right in without ever having played a Bethesda title before. but we like to look at it less like playing a game and more about living in the universe we created. So settle in, going at your own pace, and pretty soon you'll learn all the systems and be adventuring through the settled systems the way you choose. As for going into a character's backstory, that's entirely up to you. I'm all about that headcanon. For example, my latest character is a working schlub named Mitch Dombrowski. He's a husky, good-natured space trucker, and while he'll do whatever he needs to defend himself, he'll never shoot first. He's like Han Solo's sweeter older brother, and yes, there are traits and backgrounds that support that kind of thing. Will says, while we do start off in the same spot, what happens to you before the game starts is totally up to you and your headcanon. There is a trait and background system that will let you specify more about yourself, but you can also select an anonymous background and no traits if you want to. In terms of if you've never played a Bethesda game before, try anything. We're a simulation as well as a role-playing game, so we try to support the player doing whatever they want as much as we can. Now, this is one of my favorite questions that they had asked. I'm very interested in this one. How will the smuggling cargo system work, and can we hide it somewhere on the ship and sell it for more currency later? Certain items are considered contraband, and you'll need to smuggle them past security ships that are in orbit of major settlements. You can hide them using special ship modules you can purchase, so don't get caught with those harvested organs. The economy is fixed, but the prices of bought and sold goods can be changed based on the skills that you choose. Will there be a jail system if we do commit crimes? Yes, you can elect to go to jail or pay a fine when you're arrested, or even resist arrest and try to escape. The settled systems is more like Skyrim than Fallout 4's Commonwealth in that regard. There's civilian, there's government, and there are laws, and in a couple of cases, we actually explore the themes of crime and punishment in our futuristic universe. Now that part was interesting to me. He does explain themes of crime and punishment, so does that mean depending on what we do, we actually might get different punishments, whereas Skyrim, you just go to jail, no matter what you do. Will time pass when not in the game? For example, will my trade routes, outposts, and mining operations continue to produce, or does that only occur while actively playing? Short answer is no, this is a offline game. You have to be playing to keep everything running. Can you be a double agent in the game? For example, if you wanted to join the United Colonies, can you also join the Crimson Fleet and give the United Colonies information? And what factions have that feature if they do? Will says that all the playable factions can be completed independently. The Crimson Fleet storyline does feature you being an undercover agent inside the fleet on behalf of the UC SysDef, a specific military branch of the United Colonies. But whether you betray the fleet or UC SysDef is a choice you'll have to make. Depending on traits selected during character creation, will it at all be possible to play through the game in a pacifist mode without killing anyone or even potentially anything? Will says that he cannot guarantee every mission can be completed in pacifist mode, but we do have a couple of systems that will help. One system is our speech challenge game, where you can persuade someone to do something like not fight you. The speech challenge game is added in specific scripted moments, and we try to add one in most quests where important characters confront you. Now, Emil does say, we talked about this very early during pre-production, whether or not we would fully support a non-lethal playthrough. We realized that for various reasons that wasn't totally feasible. Now that being said, there are some good non-lethal options, whether through dialogue or by using a non-lethal weapon. Those can be used in certain situations, honestly a lot of situations, though I couldn't comfortably say you can complete the entire game without killing anyone whatsoever. The settled systems is mostly civilized, but it can be a dangerous place if you're going off the beaten path, and you're absolutely going to go off the beaten path. What are the beliefs and basic history of the religions that we can join? The Sanctum Universum, Enlightened, and Great Serpent. This one I really liked as well. I am really interested in especially the Great Serpent lore. That seems very interesting to me. So Emil does say that existing RL religions are part of the Starfield universe, with folks of all religions and denominations out there, but we don't really focus on them. Instead, we highlight 3 new ones specific to the game. Sanctum Universum. The members called Universals believe that God very much exists somewhere in the universe, that a higher power is guiding us all. Specifically, they believe that humanity's ability to travel the universe and grav jump is God's way of saying, I'm out here, come find me. Will goes on further and says, the Sanctum Universum is only a couple of decades old in our timeline, but has gained a lot of prominence. The Enlightened. These folk are essentially organized atheists. They don't believe in any kind of higher power. Rather, they teach that human beings will have to take care of each other, and they practice what they preach through various community outreach programs. Now, as far as House Varun, oh boy, he says. So in the game, you're not really sure what the complete truth is, but the gossip among the guards is this. A colony ship sets off for a new world, making grav jumps along the way. After one of the grav jumps, one of the passengers claimed he had spent that time communing with a celestial entity known as the Great Serpent. What was only a few seconds for everyone else was much longer for him, and he brought back a mandate, which is basically get on board or be devoured when the Great Serpent encircles the universe. But is it true? I ain't saying. So in the game, you sometimes face off against House Varun zealots, as in an enemy group, and that's their motivation. I recently got the House Varun logo tattooed on my wrist, so yeah, I dig them. We do actually see them in the Starfield Direct video. They were talking about specifically this religion. They didn't tell us what the religion was, but it showed that they were being attacked. However, his character had the trait of the House Varun. So he had an extra dialogue option where he said that he's already worshiping the Great Serpent, and they actually joined him, and I believe they went off and did something together. Maybe that's how you continue the quest line with this religion. Next up, how many companions total will we be able to recruit? Will Shen says that there are over 20 named characters who can join your crew. It makes me question with the named part if there's non-named. 4 of them are from Constellation and have the most story and interaction with the player, but all of the named characters have their own backgrounds and can follow you around and carry your stuff. Emil says over 20 total, and we really focused on the members of Constellation. When we first began Starfield pre-production, we looked back at our previous games and realized how popular and effective the companions were, so they were a big priority for us, and we really wanted to tie them directly to the main quest. There are some really big moments with them specifically. I should also mention that our companion voice cast is amazing. We haven't released the list yet, but you can be sure there are a lot of talented actors bringing those characters to life. Same for Constellation in general. When we assign crew members to work at outposts, do we have to pay them salaries? You do have to pay them once. We actually experimented with paying them regular salaries, but ultimately decided to just have the one cost up front. There's a lot to do in Starfield, and we wanted to minimize what the player had to constantly keep track of. You can use the speech challenge game to negotiate over the one-time payment, however, and some traits do affect the cost. Will our companions be able to level up their perks, and will perks be able to stack with ours? Will says that all crew start with this set of perks that specific ranks. So you might meet a character that's especially good at rifles, and you hire them to watch your back. Or you might meet an astrodynamics expert that will increase your grav jump range when assigned to your ship. Emil says that they don't level up, but they come at different ranks depending on the companion. But we do call them skills in Starfield, not perks. And they do stack with yours when relevant. Some are there for flavor to highlight the companion's backgrounds and interests, but you'll really feel the benefit of the ship and combat related ones. Getting a boost to your shields or seeing your companion laying down fire with a weapon they're proficient in are pretty sweet moments. What are your favorite parts of the game? Emil says that my position and my experience is a little different than yours. I won't speak for Will, but personally, I've seen every questline, every city, every major piece of content in the game at every stage of development, so my answer is colored by that. For me, the real pleasure is seeing how they're all evolved into the versions they are today, and the versions everyone here will play. I do have a real soft spot for Neon. Getting that city nailed down took a lot of work by a lot of different people. I also love all the quest lines. I think they're the best we've ever done. The designers on this project totally killed it. Will says that I love finding content that I haven't seen yet or forgot about. Our games are so big that no one person is likely to have seen it all. Even after our passes and level of review, our quests really evolve over development, and it's great to see how everyone adds to them. Designers, animators, voice actors, lighting, everything. What books or movies had big influence on some of the quests? Will said, I'm a total history nerd, so I actually listen to a lot of podcasts like Hardcore History and the History of Rome. While our game is science fiction, I like how historians can tell you about how human beings react to extreme circumstances like war, famine, and technological breakthroughs. And you can imagine how we'd react to similar circumstances in a fictional setting, just at a grander scale. Emil said, well, I'm a child of the late 70s, early 80s, and I have very fond memories of the sci-fi at the time. Starfield, OG Battlestar Galactica, Space 1999, Buck Rogers, Battle Beyond the Stars, Ice Pirates, and let's not forget the classic that is Metal Storm, the destruction of Jared Sin. But also much headier sci-fi stuff like the writings of Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein, or films like Contact, Interstellar, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and even Event Horizon. In all of those examples, you realize that outer space is two things: a source of mystery and wonder, sometimes terror, and two, a giant blank page on which you can write any story, and we have written a lot of very different stories in Starfield. What are some favorite small details in Starfield to add to the immersion? Emil said that I think what I really love is that although humans are living in space and our aesthetic is very much NASA punk, this is a very lived-in universe, and you can see it everywhere. You know, everyone loves the sandwiches, but it's the books that are lying around, the notes on the bulletin boards, the environmental storytelling that our level developers and world artists are so good at. I totally love the work from our voice actors too, and the music, the sound effects, and clothes. Buttons, we do love our buttons. Will said, I look really closely at all of our outfits. You can see the seams, the materials, especially on the spacesuits. Constellation members have patches on their spacesuits and they're tied to what skills they have. And the final question, what is the history of the mechs? Over here in media, you can actually find these videos. Here, there are these 3 settled system videos, along with some other stuff that they've released over the several months. These 3 are what they're talking about, and I believe it is in this one here where we see actual giant mechanical robots that we're controlling. So Emil said, oh, the mechs, good one. We showed this a bit in one of the animated shorts. The mechs are leftovers from the Colony Wars. No, it is a colony war and not colony wars. It is singular. Both sides, United Colonies and Freestar Collective, had mechs, but the Freestar Collective really mastered them. The United Colonies had mechs too, but they also relied on the controlled alien beasts from their Xeno Warfare Division. Both of those were outlawed with the armistice that ended the Colony War. I'm not saying there's an old mech battleground in the game, I'm typing it. But the mechs are not usable, they are in ruins. So there are a few things from this one that I found kind of interesting. The Freestar Collective, I actually wouldn't have thought that they'd be really mastered the mechs. I would have expected the United Colonies as their more militaristic style. But they also have the Xeno Warfare Division, which I find is very interesting. I want to learn more about that. But guys, that is all that they have released so far this week. Hopefully there'll be some more lore that will be dropping next week that I'll give an update on. I am getting very excited for this game, and the lore that is currently dropping is getting quite interesting. I really think the United Colonies are kind of looking like some bad guys based on some of the things I am seeing so far. They tend to be the ones who start the wars. But that is why we need to dig deeper and find out what really happened. So guys, I hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe if you guys want to see more of this content. I'm going to be doing this in addition to my normal Elder Scrolls videos. Hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you guys next time.